Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar or roundtable, if you will, on AI adoption, how the AI is changing the role of the CISO, how it's changing security teams. I'm joined here by Steve and John. I'm Jacob Berry. I'm the field CISO here at Fable. John, would you like to do an introduction?
Hey, thanks everybody. My name is John Yeoh. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at the CSA. What does that mean, right? I'm head of R&D. We do a lot of our AI deployments and our AI discoveries, and so we have a pretty cool team as well as external community playing with technologies, helping build best practices around how we adopt these technologies, and then we share those methods and everything we learn with the rest of the world. So it's pretty cool what we get to do. We get to play with things, and then we get to share that with everybody. And there's a lot of collaboration, a pretty big consortium, a pretty huge effort to do these things. But hopefully what we're doing makes sense, and people see a lot of value in what we're doing. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, John. Over to you, Steve.
I'm the VP of Global Security for a company called Iyuno, where we specialize in media localization. So we're the ones that help subtitle, translate, dub, and do the important work that makes uh, stories more accessible to different cultures, community, and languages. We support over 100 different languages. We're in 29 different countries, 45 facilities. So my biggest passion in my role is that I get to protect storytellers and the impact that they can have on the world. And our company is going through the same evolution as everyone else right now with the AI landscape. So I'm very excited to have this conversation with you all about, what this means, not just for my business specifically, but for everyone's business as well. And also how this is going to change the world.
Yeah, it sure will change the world. I agree. For our participants here watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in chat. We'll try to triage them either during the conversation if we can, or we'll get to some of those at the end. We've put up a poll here, rethinking how CISOs lead. If you can answer that, we'll talk a little bit about these polls as we go as well. So I think to kick this topic off, when we think about the change in tech and how that affects CISOs and how it affects the CISO industry, affects practitioners, individual contributors in their roles. I think we have to start about what do leaders want to be? I think a lot of the leaders I talk to, and a lot of security leaders or even mid-level directors or VPs say, I really want to be a business leader. I want to be part of the business and help with the overall either operations, the revenue. I want to be leading businesses, though. I don't want to necessarily be viewed just as the risk guy. That's one way to view your career, right? And that's a fine perspective. I feel that perspective as well for me, and I'm happy to share about that. But I don't think it's the same perspective everyone shares. I'd love to hear from you guys and whoever wants to start first, John or Steve, on how you view CISOs, how they're trying to position themselves in the business, what they want to be. What does the role actually mean to be a CISO? I think that even that phrase can be contentious between a CFO, a CEO, and a board.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can start and hand it over to John, but I mean, I'll just start by saying this is that I don't know everything or profess to have the right answer. So just keep that in mind, right, as we have this discussion. Or I'm not here to tell people like this is the way to do things, right? I'm just here to share kind of my own journey and my own experiences. And it hopes that it helps with everyone else's, right? And I'm not going to pretend to also say like these ideas are my ideas, right? Because a lot of it and what I'm about to talk about is really a combination of my own experiences through the School of Hard Knocks, like many of us, and what I've learned from others in the security community. And I guess this is why I was really excited to do this, because I feel like I'm giving back in a way. But the more everyone in the community does this more openly, I think it just helps um, the broader landscape. But the honest answer is like unfortunately, the work we do is like the cost is cumulative and quiet. Right? We spend years building something and culture, resilience, institutional muscle memory. Uh, and because it works, it's invisible, right? Everyone just cares about, oh, shoot, we had a breach. And they only see the bad. Rarely do they see the good. And I've made peace with it. And it took me longer than I like to admit, but I think this is where it's meaningful is that the visibility problem is partly mine to solve. right? Not by creating security theater or metrics theater, but by getting better at narrating the foundation while we're building it and naming what's being created for anyone that thinks to ask about it, right? And what's unique, going back to the AI topic here, is that AI is a transformation where the CEO and the CISOs are genuinely looking at the same set of unknowns at the same time, right? So I don't think there's a power imbalance there, which we could take advantage of, and that narrows the window. And I think the executives who recognize that and the security leaders who are ready for it are um, going to build something different than everyone else.
John, I think you spend a lot of time with lots of CISOs in your role. Do you think what Steve is saying it reflects others? Do you think that's one perspective? Do you think there's other perspectives? How would you rationalize what Steve's ideas on the ability for the CISO and the CEO now to be on this sort of even playing field when it comes to AI adoption and everyone able to contribute to the business equally?
Yeah, no, Steve a really good perspective there, and historically we've always been, security's been this negative goal, if it makes sense, where no matter how hard you work, you're measured by what didn't happen, right? Which is really tough. So did we get breached? And then can you really measure that? Did we get breached? Were there incidents? Was it because, I as a CISO was awesome, or was it because we just got lucky, right? It's really hard to make that distinction. And so being a risk leader versus being, a strategic business leader, it's a really tough distinction. Uh, I almost think it goes both ways. If you're going to be a good strategic business leader, you have to have some sense of risk and at least understand the business risk and the security risk. They're going to overlap in a lot of areas. Today, man, I think it changes everything, right? With the shift towards AI, and we've seen this before. I work with at a company called Cloud Security Alliance, and so we lived this through the cloud era, and now I feel like AI is even taking a, we're moving even faster and seeing even a bigger change, and I'm pretty sure I don't have to tell people that they recognize that. And to be a business leader, you have to be like an AI leader today. Like, so you really need to understand the technology. You need to help the business move and enable. And that's always been the case with security, right? Oh, you're the house of no, you're not the house of enablement. And today, I think it's different. Security teams I talk to, CISOs I talk to, they are being the innovators and the leaders in their companies. And I think that's a huge opportunity. Uh, AI as an enablement, how are you using AI as a security team? And there's so many ways that I'm sure we'll get into in this talk, right, Steve? But anywhere from, advanced, automated AI SOCs to how we're doing vulnerability management. The list can go on and on, but I think there's a ton of ways for security to bring innovation to the business, and that's a great way to be a strategic business leader.
I think that's a good topic to double click on, and maybe why a lot of people even join this webinar. When we think about being a strategic business leader in AI adoption, there is a knee-jerk reaction in a lot of security teams, especially on the practitioner level, but exists all the way up to the CISO and back down to say no to emerging technology because of the risk side and the risk that emerging technology brings. What we've seen, a lot of what I've seen here at Fable, is that people that do that, that say no to AI, it's just being bypassed any controls. People will even just take data and type it into their personal devices and do their work there to get the thoughts out and into a LLM if their device is locked down. So maybe we'll go back to Steve and then back to John. What do you think, Steve, from a AI enablement? Do you think that we can still control the process as much as we used to? Do you think we have to change? What's your take there?
Yeah, one of my favorite things I always like to talk about is like Jurassic Park, right? It's really true when they say life finds a way. I feel like it's relevant in our environment here, and we've talked about shadow IT for the longest time. This is no different, right? Instead of shadow IT, it's like shadow AI use,
Hmm.
you know. But I think it's a very interesting conversation when we think about kind of process. Because I think when we look at existing processes right now, it's under the assumption that we evaluate, right? Assess, approve, right? And the assumption is like we're first, right? And it only works if we're first. But when a team can adopt way faster than what we're used to, like before lunch or whatever, essentially we're last at that point. And governing from last place means we're not managing the risk, we're just documenting it, right? So we have to position ourselves to like be as first as possible. This is where, the topic of velocity enablement and speed matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I was smiling when Jacob was saying that, people would bypass and use personal devices for either GPTs or chatbots they couldn't use in their enterprise. And I laugh because people did that all the time, right? I was smiling because people do that all the time. And it is crazy to think how different like policies have changed in the last 3.5 years, right? 3.5 years,
Mhm.
that's when ChatGPT came about. It seems like decades ago in my head. But in 3.5 years, we went from absolutely no AI use policy in large enterprises to a lot of enterprises allowing you to use just about everything, or at least to have very vetted frontier models that you can use. And so, uh, what a difference, what a difference that's made with just the evolution of how we've used AI. And so, yeah, AI moves fast. The AI usage moves fast. I don't think it's not new per se. Like we dealt with that SaaS explosion, like several years ago, right? Where everybody was able to turn on a SaaS product with just the flip of a credit card, corporate card, personal card, whatever, and you could turn on a SaaS product. And AI is the same way, but I think we're again 3.5 years has been compressed so much to where AI is being either turned on by it's either being used. I'm not even talking about just chatbots, where you're having developers using coding agents. We have your vendors integrating these co-pilot type of offerings within, your vendor products already too. And so AI is moving extremely fast. I think it's so hard it's impossible to manage the way we used to. And so if you really want true visibility in your environment these days, I mean, it completely has to change, right? Security is not the front door for any products. I think it's hasn't been that way for a long time. And so hopefully we learned a few things from the cloud era that we can implement into the AI era and then add a little another 10x to that so we can keep up with how many different toolings people are using. Not just that too, but the capabilities of these AI agents and AI tools that we have are completely different than we've dealt with. And so managing that becomes a completely different story.
It's I was talking to like CISO and it just kind of dawned on me like we spent so many decades, right, trying to reduce that attack surface, reduce the toil, reduce the complexity, right, and all this stuff, only for AI and like vibe coding to like just it's true. He mentioned it. It's like, are we just throwing that out the door at this point? Because we're just moving so fast.
Yeah, and because if you don't throw that out the door, I mean, you're just not going to be able to keep up with like the adoption that we talked about too. So, I mean, we want to learn a few things certainly from the past, but the way we did, point in time assessments, the way we did procurement processes, and I work with, the on the federal side of, how do we get the best technologies in the hands of federal agencies? How do we do that for our business? These long assessment and procurement processes are just too slow if we're going to, be fast, be at the top of the market. So yeah, it comes real.
Right, and that's where the Department of No comes from, right? There's a
Yeah.
couple interfaces a security team really has with the general population of a business. It's going to be your awareness training. It's going to be any new hire training you do, and it's procurement. Like those really are going to be the three spots that an employee sees you in a business. I think we talked a little bit, John, maybe briefly as we were preparing for this about agentic processes for third-party risk. Have you seen a little bit of using AI to actually help?
Oh, yeah. No, no, for sure. I think when we see these questionnaires, uh, we're seeing a lot of AI tools that are helping, vendors generate answers that are being, AI populated. And then those answers are being assessed by other AI agents that are assessing like, do those answers line up? And we've heard there's a little bit of bloat there sometimes too. I think they're calling that like a compounded error where if there's any type of error or hallucination, even hallucinations with the agents, that it gets compounded when you're doing these. But I mean, continuous automation is definitely the future, right? These are manual spreadsheet methods that, we don't want to do, we don't need to do. I do think it changes though a lot, where like how we measure things. Are we measuring things effectively even today? And I know, man, I know a couple like really Fortune like 20 CISOs that have completely gotten rid of assessments because it's never blocked a procurement. It's never prevented a breach. So it's a cost where they're like, hey, why are we doing these when there's a completely different way that we need to measure how we onboard tools? And so that was a process that they thought slowed them down. And so they actually got rid of, at least at the moment, yeah, those kind of assessments are out the door, not being used, completely removed. And so it's pretty crazy to think about. Things like that in a large organization sh completely shifted and changed. It's crazy to think about for a lot of us, but people are making big decisions in order to move quickly.
It's scary for sure. I mean, it feels like we're giving away some control, and security is all about the control. It's like, how do I get my arms around the thing? Steve, you've authored recently a paper a little bit around third-party risk in AI. How do you think we take this new approach to third-party risk management? What's your thoughts on either using AI for third-party risk? These CISOs that have thrown it out completely, is that too drastic, too far on the other side? What is your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's just every organization is different. I was never a believer in a one size fit all type model. So
Yeah.
I can definitely see why some CISOs would want to do that. But in the business that I'm in, right, the biggest thing is like we service a lot of customers, and we want to be able to accommodate what they care about. And I'm not also not in the business to tell them what they should and shouldn't care about, because they have their own unique threat models, right? That they have a job too, and which I appreciate, just like we have internally here. And sometimes that's kind of, the challenge sometimes is like both I'm internal facing, but also customer facing. So for me, it's all about visibility, because I can't predict at any moment what a customer is going to ask us about, right? It could be anything from security to compliance to data, protection to governance, right? There's just so many different conversations to have out there. So, when I was looking at like our own experiences and journey with that context in mind, I'll say like what we're doing isn't perfect, right? And part of like taking, traditional models to this new AI world, right? It's partly intentional, but we also understand it's partly a limitation that we're still working through, because like I think the honest answer is like there's really no framework that moves fast enough right now.
Right.
And what I was really trying to solve for is giving teams a decision architecture, right? So they're not starting from zero every time. Um, you know, the does that at least mean we're making conscious trade-offs instead of accidental ones, right? I think
Yeah.
John, you mentioned the accidental thing earlier in the different context, but I think that's the bet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to we always talk about like good enough security, right? Because yeah, security is not going to be perfect. And so I always like this, I like the NFL, I like football, right? So I always think like really good examples. I feel bad for all these really good offensive linemen where they can go the whole game by like, hey, you know what? I blocked my guy super well. They never got to the quarterback, but then all it takes is one sack. You give one sack at a big moment, and suddenly it looks like you had a really bad day. And that's going to happen always, but what is good enough? And I think good enough has is definitely changing right now. So we're changing our risk tolerances for sure. I think what we need to do is also change like how we measure risk. And Steve, I did read your paper. I really liked it a lot. It certainly talks about visibility, which is super important. Do we even understand what's in our environment? You can't protect what you can't see. Absolutely. You had that separation of security and privacy aspects of each third party as well. I think where risk has to change too is not just that too, but we need to start, the indicators need to change a little bit, if not a lot, where behaviors become really important now too. So it's not just about, is this third party in my environment? What access levels does it have? But what is it doing? right? And so if I even think of like what we, I mentioned coding agents earlier too. So people are using coding agents. Does it have access to my GitHub repo? Is it able to, to write code and execute code or things like that too, right? If I have a sales customer agent, can it write emails? Can it send emails? Can it negotiate costs?
Right.
And so these are the things that I really want to understand about my agents and is those behaviors, because that's really, I think, where the big risk is going to be.
What, as we're thinking through some of this, I had a thought here. Where do you think the liability ends up falling for a security leader or a company if we have an agentic product that's being reviewed by our third-party risk process that we turn into, say, an agent that takes in the procurement data, kicks off the legal thing. Let's even go full futurist, whether you believe we'll get here or not. That then sends it to our legal agent, who then does the legal review and then kicks it back to the third-party risk review agent, who then says to our security architect, go and do these things. What happens when that process breaks, when one or all of those AI agents pass down liability incorrectly assess and control? Is that just a new world we'll live in? Because we already live in a world where we accidentally make mistakes already and we accept liabilities we didn't know we accepted, or a human makes a mistake. Is it just that it's so new, we're uncomfortable with it? Or is it something that we should actively try to work around? Like, what happens in this world where agents are doing these decision makings?
Man, I think you hit on something big there too, Jacob. I feel like that's everything, right? Isn't it like accountability, certainly here, but accountability seems to be so much there too. And so you want to say that it falls onto the account owner, the agent owner, the product owner itself. But that gets really tricky because as we try to move faster, we are automating a lot of things too, right? So do we want to keep the human in the loop? Absolutely. But there's areas where we want to keep abstracting that out too, where, I mean, there's a point where, the LLM can be the judge of certain things, and then we move on so that humans can deal with certain things. But we're going to be so far abstracted from that to where, you auto-approve so many things. And so when something goes wrong, and in our world, it's not about if, but when, right? So when something goes wrong, who is liable? Does that go back onto the product owner, the account, owner for that, for whatever was compromised or whatever was leaked? That gets really tricky. And it seems like the answer should be yes, but we're going to be so far abstracted from that. And I mean, I can be guilty of a lot of things. I mean, if a lot of us are playing with agents, I mean, there are a lot of automations when an agent is asking you for permissions. I get pretty lazy sometimes, and I'm just hitting click to get through this. Hey, just
Yeah.
do what I'm telling you to do. And so, gosh, I probably shouldn't admit that as a security practitioner, but I mean that's real life. We're trying to make things move faster, and so, uh, yeah, that is accountability becomes everything, Jacob, and that's really interesting. If something goes wrong, is it the customer or like the whoever owns that account? Is the vendor, the business? I mean, we're like how much of the shared responsibility and shared accountability is there? That model has, changed for cloud, it changes for AI, and yeah, it gets very tricky to think about. Gosh, Steve, save me here. I don't know. I don't know how to really answer that
Yeah,
question.
so I mean, I've been kind of back and forth with this. We think
Yeah.
about this in so many different contexts, but Jacob, you mentioned human earlier, right? And it triggered something
Mm.
in my mind. Like, we talk about AI and AGI as an example, right? And Terminator and just being completely autonomous. It, it made me think or remind myself that essentially this new technology is still a human artifact, right? At the end of the day, it's going to have our flaws, right? And then also the best of us. But what I think about, and I would like to get like some of your thoughts on this, and even those in the audience that even like think about this internally. But how are we going to view a human making a mistake versus AI making a mistake? Which is more forgiving, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like psychologically, I think we will. treat those two errors very differently.
I think we already have gotten a taste of that too, right? Where for some reason there's like zero tolerance for machines making mistakes, even though humans we make them all the time. And I worked on the with the Federal Highway Administration on the autonomous vehicle piece for a number of years, and that was always a scenario where like, oh, all it's going to take is this, autonomous, truck to to smash into a bunch of cars in front of us, and then it's over. And yet we see like human drivers, fall asleep at the wheel or or get distracted and make these mistakes all the time. And so we're just talking about reducing that. If we can reduce that, our system's going to be perfect. I don't think so, especially early on, but for some reason there's that expectation, and that's the tolerance with the machines right now. So if I suddenly have an autonomous agent and it makes a mistake, it's completely highlighted. And it's like, oh, we can't do this. It made a mistake. Yet I can tell you a lot of people on teams that make mistakes daily, right? And we deal with it. We tolerate it because I don't know if it's because it's a human thing or I don't know what we're missing there, but there's definitely a detachment to where machines have to be perfect, but we're very tolerant when humans make mistakes.
And I think that's like part of our decision making mindset, right? It's like because we talk about influence a lot, right? And what I think about is like how far can I go and really understand, have more self-awareness of myself and like why we're influencing the way we are. Why are we making the decisions like the way we are? And a lot, and this is me being candid. Sometimes, I think we get overly academic and corporate with it that we kind of forget the human aspect
Definitely.
of it, right?
I think it's one of our great flaws as security practitioners, and I'm speaking for all security practitioners when I say that, but maybe it's just me, that we can be overly academic with what is right when it comes to security. And I think it's one of the things that rubs people the wrong way with security a lot of times. Like we just always feel that we know something other people don't know, which to some degree might be true because we are experts in this area, right? Um, yeah, I just thought I'd share that thought there. I didn't
No,
have where else I was going with it.
that's no, I think I like kind of when you mention that too, Jacob, because there's a lot of self-reflection that needs to go into how we use agents today. What are you really good at, and what can an agent do better? Boy, it can be really challenging. I mean, I've done this myself, and it can be really,
Yeah,
I mean, it can be really prideful thinking that like, hey, this is what I was really good at. Like I was really good at, seeing the big picture of how technologies, connect together so we can setting up partnerships and here's a great technology stack because these work together well. Oh man, AI can do that so well now, right? And I'm pretty sure like however long I'm thinking about it, Jacob or Steve will just do like a single prompt and generate a response in like 30 seconds that'll that'll meet or exceed what I can come up with in a couple hours. And so things like that are really tough for like the human ego, I think. And so yeah, we need to get over those things to one, make sure AI is effective, like working for you, like really replacing, what you don't need to do. And then that goes for your business as well. And then that leads into the whole tolerance thing where like, hey, is it one of those things too where we just think we're so good at it, so we're waiting for AI to make a mistake? Ah, I knew it. I knew it. I knew I was better than AI at
I,
that. It made a mistake. But yeah, that's to say that we're not flawed as well too, right? So yeah, it's a tough one.
I think it's a great transition to another topic that we discussed in this. Steve, we talked about a paper you wrote. Now we'll talk a little bit, John, about a paper that you contributed to,
Mhm.
which is around being mythos ready, right? And that was a 17 page. Did I get that number right? Something is rel
29 pages as of today.
20, 29. It's pretty long. There's a lot of great content in there. How do you think security teams should digest that volume of content? How do you think people should start thinking about these things? Do you think Mythos will be as revolutionary as people talk about it on social media? What prompted the paper? Like, what do we do with all of this, I guess, talk about Mythos? What led to the paper? What have you realized? What should security teams know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to, gosh, I'd love to share a bunch about this. And if you're not familiar with Mythos, right, this is Anthropic's next model that We do see this as not just an iterative change, but a huge step change in what models can do today. And for a lot of us who've been playing with models, uh, you had to give a lot of direction and prompts, a lot of scaffolding in your agents to kind of get the proper outcome. And we're recognizing that Mythos, you don't have to do that. And so just the power of what Mythos can do alone was pretty impressive. Uh, a lot of people saw it as like was it a great, marketing stunt by Anthropic? Yeah, it absolutely was. But as things are overhyped, I think what's legit and maybe underhyped is what we did with the paper too. And so when the Glasswing project came out on April 7th, that was where Anthropic gave Mythos to the top 48 critical software companies so they could play with it, discover vulnerabilities, and then, share those as, fix them and patch them before Mythos is available to the public. And I think that was a great thing. That was a really good thing. And so as we did that, uh, several CISOs thought that, yeah, we should probably start talking about this. And so we planned to do a huddle like the following week. And that Friday before, we decided to, hey, we should probably do a two-page paper on this just to get people like a little preview of what it means. And over the weekend, we had 250 CISOs and security leaders build this into the paper that, I mentioned the 20 plus page paper of really outlining what the Glasswing project meant and what practitioners did they do about it. And so uh, that was a cool part of this, how it came about. uh, just getting people together to really understand the issue and address that. And the outcomes for me was, there are several. One, hey, collaboration is going to be so important going forward with each other, with coalitions, with networks and partners and peers like we're doing today. But also, one thing I really see is there's a huge asymmetry in the amount of vulnerabilities that are going to be discovered to the ability to fix and patch things. And so that's why we called it vulnerability storm too. If we want to take one main theme out of there, there are several, but that main theme to me was like, hey, as these 48 critical software companies share their fixes of vulnerabilities that you need to deploy right because they're not going to do that in your environment. So you need to do that yourself. Not just that too, but as Mythos is available to everybody, it's going to upskill average people to become pretty decent red teamers, and then existing red teamers, their agentic harnesses or the tools they use are going to be super powered by these new tools too. So not just Mythos, but a step change that we see with OpenAI, with Gemini, with all the frontier models, as well as like open source models are going to be doing this too. So the availability of this power at the fingertips of just about anybody is what probably kind of scares us a little bit too, because if 48 companies found this many vulnerabilities, just wait till something like that is available to millions of people. Yeah, and that's a snapshot of at least what we thought was really cool out of the report.
And I think you're doing like a three-city tour, right? To speak about this. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I feel like we've talked about it in just about everywhere too, but it's about, yeah, Steve, it's about just building off of that too. So what is a Mythos ready? And, I know a lot of people don't like us using, Anthropic's terminology there, but what does just the next generation AI model ready security program look like? And that's what we wanted to talk about, the shifting, like how does risk change? What are the main types of things we should be looking for in a risk registry? How should we manage this complete vulnerability storm that's going to be hitting your security teams? And so, uh, yeah, all this becomes, we want to do this, like travel to all these different cities, Steve, to get people to talk about these things so we can build like like a security program is going to be more than 29 pages, right, Jacob, right, Steve? And so this is the idea to just expand on that and build something that all of us can benefit from.
And which I deeply appreciate and my team deeply appreciates because I'm constantly trying to find learning materials. Like I'm a lifelong learner, right? As we all should be if we want to stay relevant, but then effective. Most importantly, effective. So, I think the controls that you've talked about is so important, especially for those organizations that don't know where to start. right? It's just start somewhere and just iterate. I think that's far better than not starting at all or just analysis paralysis, right? So for me personally, anything that helps me break out of that analysis paralysis, right, gives me some kind of path or direction is like, extremely helpful
Yeah.
because just like some of the things I've read about entrepreneurs and how they've been successful, it's not the fact that when they built their businesses, it's like they had all the answers on day one. They didn't. They eventually got there, but it was a journey. It was a process. It was a lot of failures. Even when you think about like our most cherished, platforms today, like social media apps, for example, that was a long experimentation. How do we build this? Because there's no like college course or book on how to do this or navigate this. So it's really great that you've helped start this conversation that gives us the ability to think about, you know, what it's like for us, we like to think about like what's the worst realistic outcome if AI fails in our environment? It could be data exfil, model manipulation, compliance exposure, whatever the answer is, like that's typically our filter there. But I love that we can pull the controls, right? That a lot of you have mentioned to address those scenarios first, um, and then kind of iterate from there.
Yeah.
I, I'm as I've started looking and joining here at Fable, I've started pulling some different things apart on what we need to do for our security program. But even in my last company, one of the things I've really realized, I think, in the last couple of years, a change in my own mindset, if you will, is that almost everything we built up until now in security programs built on the initial ideation of security and governance and risk management. And the entire world has changed since a lot of the initial thoughts, frameworks, styles. We see this with SOC 2, where SOC 2 is really under attack right now for all the right reasons, frankly, um, in my opinion. And now I've really started thinking about what does it mean to have a security program that's new? What lessons do we take from the past? What do we need to throw out? What do we change, both from a process perspective, a technology perspective? We went 10, 15 years ago through IT transformation, and now I'm slowly trying to I'm trying to start this idea and trend of security transformation. If you guys can spread it out there, help me with that if you believe it's something that's necessary too. I think it's time for that as an industry though. A lot of the people like that I learned from initially and wrote huge tech books on security have now retired, right? They're not thinking about what's next. They've gone on to do what they deserve to do, which is they worked really hard to help and set us up. And now they get to enjoy the back half of life. But now I think everyone that's in leadership positions needs to say, what should we take from the first generation of security and what is the true next generation, not using next generation as tech vendors use it. I know I do work for a tech vendor and I'm saying that, but what do we need to do? Do you guys have thoughts there? Do you think I'm thinking about this right, or am I just insane? Am I leaning too much into futurism?
I, man, I love what you said. Security transformation, absolutely. I met a pretty amazing CISO last week and pretty, major financial services organization. And he admitted that he's like, hey, we got awards for having a really like one of the best security programs for today. But when he thought about that, especially with the AI era, he's like, I wanted to also build the best security program for tomorrow. And it's amazing what he did in order to do that. And he just completely transformed a really strong security program for tomorrow. And it's a huge gamble. At this point, he told me it was going really well. But yeah, that's what it's going to take. And you probably don't have to transform your entire program at once, right? But little
Right.
iterative pieces of it to really address how different things are today. And so we talked about a number of things that are changing. Number of ways to be innovative, a number of ways that AI is just being ingested into your organization too. So can we add visibility? Can we be innovators? Can we transform our security programs the right way? Man, I think it does take. Man, it takes a big move, but I think we have to do it if we're going to survive.
I think the one thing that has been tried and true for me that we shouldn't forget as we go deep into the weeds of this AI era is that when we think about our threat actors, right, the real human adversary is still at the end of the day, even with AI, right?
Mhm.
And, and when we remind ourselves that we're dealing with real human adversaries, we have to account for how they're going to use AI and how does this change their economics too, as well as their motivation and tactics and all that. Um, because I think that could also help drive how we build our defenses rather than putting our fingers in the air. Okay, we think this is gonna be our best bet because I think this is what makes our job very challenging, is that it's like battleship, right? We don't know where the other ships are, but we have to like figure it out and like hit the ships, you know? So there's that challenge there. So,
Yeah,
I'm always constantly thinking about like how we still address the human adversary aspect of this, not just the technology.
way to bring us back down a bit, but but you're so you're right in the sense that
Yeah.
the adversaries those malware operations are smooth, man. And do these new I think the new vulnerability discovery is big because time to exploit those vulnerabilities is completely reduced. But to Steve's point, that those malware, like the malware that is going to be, pushed through these exploits, is pretty basic stuff that's just going to be, security fundamentals. That's what it's going to go after. It's just basic access controls, privilege access. Make sure you have the regular human, the really basic security fundamentals down, because that's actually what's going to be exposed more so. Will there be maybe a creative attack path to get there? That's where AI is going to come in handy. But malware isn't going to change that much yet. It's just going to expose what you've already been sloppy at. So yeah, security fundamentals. Steve, I think that's where you're going with that, and I think you're right there for sure. That's what's going to be popped first.
Yeah, I guess to bring us back down to earth a little more even, there's probably still a Windows XP machine sitting in a hospital that's relatively close to all of us right now. And we've talked about all of these heady ideas, but I think you guys are both right. We're getting close to the end here, I think, for our time. Maybe we could each go around and share a thought for the audience and make good on the promise that we gave them at the beginning of what does AI transformation, what does the role of the CISO look like, or even practitioners looking to adopt to AI to maybe change their role in the business. What does that mean, I guess, for you? And what's a piece of advice that you could give to the audience? And then I'll go last here and I'll try to think of one as well as you guys go first.
Yeah, I guess I can start with this one because I've been thinking a lot about this one because I'm personally going through this myself here. And I feel like getting invited to the table or being voluntold is kind of the
Hmm.
easy part that we're seeing right now, right? So I think, the hard part is staying relevant in the room, right? And that just means like you show up having already done the business math. Um, Not here are the risks, but here's how we do this in 60 days instead of 6 months. Here's what that's worth. And here's the three things we can't compromise on to get there. We're still having a risk discussion, but it's framed a little differently, right? And I think the CISO already has a cross-functional fluency today, the risk judgment and the technical depth. What most are missing is the growth language, then the ability to walk into a room and talk about what AI unlocks, not just what it threatens. Um, and then lastly, from a tactical perspective, right? Like just I'm s- I'm not even writing risk reports, right? I stopped writing risk reports so I can start writing business cases. Um, and I think one that tells the business what one, right, is a scenario where one tells the business what it can't do, right? And I think that's the constitutional thing that we've been touching on. But I think the other really tells the business what it can do safely, how fast, and what it's worth.
I love that. John?
I like that, and I like that. But I guess as CISOs, we're really not just protecting systems anymore, right? We're supposed to be helping advance and enable the business to move faster. And I think that even starts with, security. Like, how are you enabling the security teams to move faster, especially when it comes to AI? Uh, One really simple thing I think we can do, like right off the bat, is you don't have to wait for Mythos or GPT 5.6. You can do things now, and if you're able to use Opus 4.7 or GPT 5.4, or 5.5, you can actually, attack your own systems and deal with this vulnerability explosion, like a mini explosion before the big, vulnerability storm happens. And so, just by playing with these systems yourself, you can find how to deal with the vulnerabilities, how to be more resilient in your organization. I think that's going to help you prepare for when, Mythos, when GPT 5.6 or whatever the next era, I guess it's going to be 6.0 whenever these next era of large language models comes out. I think that's a big one. I think it's a big one. So we're not just protecting systems, we're actually enabling the business and enabling security by being innovative and being fast and playing with AI ourselves. Uh, our CEO, Jim Rivas, kind of said this best. He said that, hey, security practitioners need to know AI as good, if not better than anybody else in the organization. I mean, that's how we protect technologies by knowing it better. And then by using it, again, we can elevate what we're doing on security teams. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there too. I would encourage teams to do that right away.
I love it. I love it. Now, I guess I'll end with something very, very tactical as my last thought of yeah, you don't have to sit in your room or in your office by yourself to think about these things. I would really encourage security practitioners to message their peers on other teams and sit and have lunch with them and just ask these questions of how would I enable you better to use AI? What are you guys trying to do today? Instead of waiting for the request to come to you or just going and playing with it on your own in your home lab, go find out what other people are interested in. Or maybe they'll say, I don't know what I want to do with it. What would you think? But just start those conversations. I think if you have them on a peer-to-peer, or beer-to-beer, might even go better that way. Uh, Conversation tactically, I think you'll see some change too. Steve, John, thank you guys for joining. I had a lot of fun. I hope we get to do this again sometime. Maybe we could even do it in person because I love that.
Beer to beer. I like it.
Beer to beer next time. Yes. Thank you everyone for joining us.